Hi there, well thanks for waiting. This is part 5 of What If Kamen Rider Decade was in RWBY. So let's start. Chapter 10, Revelations and a New Ally. Under Beacon Academy. The Destroyer of Worlds had seen many things in his many years of traveling through the various Kamen Rider worlds. While not as strange as a video game virus infecting humanity, a young woman hooked onto some type of machine was not something he typically sees. Tsukasa Kadoya had finally managed to find something that might help him learn one of the mysteries of this world, only for a new mystery to appear. As much as he wants to continue investigating, Tsukasa realized it wouldn't be long before Ajpan would notice that the Wanderer was in his basement. Eiji should have finished his match by now. Opening a dimensional wall, Tsukasa walked through it. In combat class. And make sure to keep your weapons clean. Tsukasa wasn't sure what prompted that sentence. He had returned from the toilet just as the school bell rang. Judging from the look Eiji was giving him, the vagabond rider was very displeased with him running off. On the other hand, the students looked more concerned with the fact their professor had spent the last half hour or so on the loo. Taking his seat at his desk, it wasn't even a second before his assistant came up to him. "Where were you?" Tsukasa didn't know how someone can sound so nice and annoyed at the same time. "I'll tell you later. The next class is about to come in. Sometime later." Tsukasa came across a conundrum. Either he can snoop around and figure out the secret to the girl in the basement by himself, and drag Eiji along, or he could just go straight up to Ajpan himself. The latter option was the quickest way to solve this mystery. On the other hand, the first option was more fun. Tsukasa wasn't in any rush to do anything. A secret basement with an unconscious girl hooked onto a large machine? Eiji seemed rather skeptical about the Destroyer's recent discovery. They had since retired to Tsukasa's room for the night. Eiji's room was still unavailable. That's not stranger than some of the things we usually encounter. Tsukasa countered, not finding the situation as weird as he probably should. "I don't mean it like that. It's just that I don't think Ajpan would really keep that girl hidden away right underneath a school of all places. If you don't believe me, I'll show it to you then." "Wait, without waiting for a reply, Tsukasa opened a dimensional wall. Less than a second later, the two riders were in front of the machine. "Okay then, do you know who she is?" Eiji asked. He took suddenly being sent into an unknown location well. "I just found her this morning. What do you think?" Tsukasa pointed out, "Help me look around for a bit. The machine's keeping her alive, right?" "Seems like it. I've got to ask, is there anything we can do for her? Like, heal her wounds or something?" "No. Neither of us has any healing capabilities." "Fine then. What are we looking for?" "Anything that could help us figure out her identity or why Ajpan's keeping her down here." That was easier said than done. The only thing that stuck out was a second capsule nearby similar to the one containing the comatose girl. "Nothing, huh?" Tsukasa mumbled. "Hey Eiji. Anything back there?" "Only wires, nothing else." "Don't shout. We're not supposed to be down here," Tsukasa reprimanded. So far, there was nothing that they could find. The computer connected to the two capsules yielded nothing either, not even a name. Taking another look around, nothing seemed out of the ordinary to Tsukasa immediately. He thought that he and Eiji would have found at least one thing. Taking a short breath, Tsukasa cleared his thoughts. Why would Ajpan keep someone down here? Was this why he was brought into this world? There were just too many questions and not enough answers. Not yet. Taking a moment to stretch his body, Tsukasa bent backward and looked up. Oh. In hindsight, he should have realized that Ajpan would have set up security cameras down there. What's wrong? Eiji didn't seem to have noticed the cameras yet. As if the world itself was playing a joke, the elevator opened from the end of the hallway. Moving quickly, Tsukasa dodged behind the machine while Eiji was still behind there. Quiet. Can you tell us why you called me here now? Ironwood's voice rang out from down the hall. Tsukasa heard footsteps come closer. Obviously, Ashbin either looked over the footage from earlier or just so happened to find the two-writer poking about. Alternatively, he and Ironwood coincidentally went down when Tsukasa and Eiji were there, but that was unlikely. One moment, Ashbin said. What was he up to? Has Crow contacted you yet? Not yet. You know I would have told you if he did. Whoever this Crow was, he seemed he was MIA. I doubt that's why you brought me down here to talk about. No reason, I just thought it was nice to visit Amber once in a while. So the girl's name is Amber. That was good to know. If that's all, I have other matters to attend to. If there was something Tsukasa could say that he likes about Beacon's enigmatic headmaster, he also messes around with his subordinates. Not too long after, Tsukasa heard the sound of the elevator doors again. You two can come out now. Well, that made things obvious. Come on. Tsukasa called out to Eiji and came out of his hiding spot. I must admit, it was quite impressive that you discovered this place by yourself. Ashbin complimented. As far as Tsukasa could tell from his expression, the headmaster wasn't disturbed by the fact they had basically been trespassing on his property. Wasn't that hard to find if you know where to look? Tsukasa stated. Granted, it was by pure chance that he even saw them disappear that night. Tsukasa! Eiji hissed at him. He didn't seem all too comfortable with the current situation. It's quite all right. I must admit that this vault isn't that well concealed, Ashbin said. While I knew that it was only a matter of time before you find it, I didn't think it would take you this quickly. If you knew I was poking around, why didn't you stop me? Tsukasa could venture a guess he assumed to be correct. To put it simply, I am in need of your help. I feared that confronting you would drive you away. Ashbin explained. Tsukasa wasn't 100% sure if Beacon's headmaster was lying or not with that second statement. He could easily believe that Ashbin would want his help to deal with something, though. Help with what? Eiji asked. You see, Ashbin started, I need you to help look for someone. This Crow person you and Ironwood were talking about? No, Crow can handle himself. I want you to find the people responsible for Amber's condition. Tell me what happened to her first. I need to know that before I could accept your request. Tsukasa said. Very well, Ashbin started and gestured to Amber's unconscious body. As you can see, someone had attacked her. Why? Did she have something worth killing over? Yes, something precious. Have you heard of the story of the seasons? Ashbin asked. A bit. Something about 4 sisters being granted gifts by an old man. Tsukasa had read up on some of the world's local legends and myth. Experience from the world of Koga and Ajido told him it might become important someday. Let me guess, the story's true? Precisely, Ashbin confirmed. Tsukasa wasn't sure if it was smart just to reveal all that immediately. As you say, the maidens truly exist, and Amber is one of them. Sorry, I'm a bit out of the loop again. What exactly are maidens, and what can they do? Eiji interrupted. The maidens are young women who had been granted great power over the elements. My group and I have been trying to keep their existence a secret to the world. To protect them from people who would want that power, I assume. That would make sense. While Tsukasa doesn't know exactly how powerful a maiden was, keeping them from the world at large means they are unlike that which is seen on Remnant. Correct. From what we understand, a maiden's powers are passed on to who is in their thoughts when they die. If the candidate is ineligible, the powers will go to someone else. That sounds unnecessarily complicated. Who came up with that system? So, someone ambushed this Amber and tried to take her powers. Tsukasa repeated. However, one thing didn't make sense. Wait, Amber's still alive, right? That means that she still has her powers. Eiji pointed that fact out, or is there something we're missing? That's why I am asking for your help. For the first time, someone managed to steal half of the Fall Maiden's power. so that why Amber is in a coma. According to Crow, Amber was ambushed by a group of 3 people. That was all he managed to see. And how did they manage to steal her powers? We're not sure yet, only that whoever they managed to get away before Crow could get a good look at them. Tsukasa thought about it a moment. Any idea as to how Amber's assailants learned about the maidens or even knew how to steal it? Ojban's silence was all he needed. Last question, why us specifically? Depending on how Ojban answers, Tsukasa would reject his offer. Why our help? Ojban stayed silent for a moment as if trying to find the right way to answer. I think it was fate. Fate again? You, Tsukasa Kadoya, appeared before us when we needed help the most. I fear that the mastermind behind Amber's attack is getting ready for the next stage in her plan, her? So, Ojban does know who was responsible, or at least who orchestrated the entire operation. I assume you heard of the break-in at the CCT tower a few weeks ago? Well, when you put it like that, how could we refuse? AG answered for the 2 of them. Sometimes Tsukasa wanted to strangle the guy for being too nice. However, AG had already made up his mind. And since his job is to help the writers whenever he can, that means Tsukasa has to help as well, even if he doesn't really want to. I'll help under one condition. Tsukasa added. He wasn't in the mood to blindly join a faction without any prior knowledge. And that is? Ojban asked with amusement in his voice. No secrets. Tell me everything you know about who you're fighting. Of course, I was planning on that. Seems Ojban wasn't thinking of getting the writers to explain about the new monsters. Yet. The next day. Ojban had promised that he would explain more the next day once they had finished their classes. In the meantime, Tsukasa thought of the attack on the Fall Maiden. 3 people ambushed her. And there also happened to be 3 very suspicious individuals on campus. Mercury Black, Emerald Sustrai, and Cinderfall. If they were the ones who tried stealing Amber's power, would they be really come to Beacon, where their, maybe, enemies were located? However, seeing as this Crow didn't manage to see their faces, they might not have anything to worry about. But did they know that? Or did they just take a massive risk, hoping someone wouldn't recognize them? Maybe he was just overthinking it, and they had nothing to do with it. Putting a pin on that thought, Tsukasa ended the last lesson of the day. Have a nice day. AG told the leaving students and closed the door once the last one left. Ojban asked that we use your portals to get into his office, right? Ojban apparently didn't want anyone to spot them. Tsukasa, however, was reluctant to obey that request. While Ojban already had seen him open up a dimensional wall, he didn't know if there was someone else with the headmaster. All he can do is hope that Ojban hasn't told anybody else. Unfortunately, Tsukasa didn't have much choice. Come on. Opening a dimensional wall in the middle of the classroom/arena, the 2 writers went through it. With Ojban. Ojban, for the first time in a long time, felt relieved. With 2 new allies with abilities that looked like it was far beyond those of the maidens, Ojban thought he finally had a way to defeat her. Especially since Tsukasa Kadoya had the ability to open strange portals with seemingly no limit. The problem was that the 2 were keeping valuable information from him. Namely, what exactly were the strange monsters, and why did they start to appear now? Another problem was that he would have to explain everything. Ojban had omitted some details to other members of his circle, such as the fact that she was immortal, and he didn't have any idea on how to truly defeat her when Ojban recruited them. While he could also leave that out in the upcoming meeting, Ojban had a feeling Professor Kadoya would notice something was off. Before he could think any more about the situation, a strange silvery wall emerged out of thin air in the center of his office. Stepping through the wall, Tsukasa Kadoya, who looked annoyed, and Eiji Hino came out. Alright, now what can you tell us about this mysterious person behind the shadows? Tsukasa went straight to the subject. Evidently, he was displeased that he had to wait a day to find out who he was volunteered to help fight. Take a seat first, Ojban offered to the 2, referring to the 2 chairs that had been set up in front of his desk. So then, what is it that you want to know first? A name would be nice. Tsukasa, don't be rude. AG reprimanded him. A name then. The one who had been manipulating out of sight is named Salem. Salem. How long has it been since their conflict started? Ojpin didn't even remember anymore. Salem? Like that old Americo W. Professor Hino was quickly elbowed before he could complete his sentence. Ojpin wondered what he was about to say. Next. Why are you two fighting? And what are you two fighting for? That was a bit harder to explain. And would certainly take a long while. That would take a bit to tell the whole story, so I'll keep it short. Ojpin started. What do you know of the two brothers? The gods of Remnant. Tsukasa went quiet for a moment, presumably trying to recall that tale. Let me guess, the traveler said. You are the champion or whatever for the older brother, while this Salem is the champion for the younger brother? You are close. Ojpin was rather surprised that Tsukasa hadn't even questioned if the two brothers really existed. Granted, he accepted that the maidens were real without a single pause. While it is true that the brother of light had given me a task, Salem is simply someone out for vengeance. That may be a bit of an oversimplification. A task, huh? What is it? To unite humanity before the brothers return to Remnant. And what is Salem after? She wants to make sure I don't finish my task and to bring the brothers back. That was her assumed motive anyway. Excuse me, AG interrupted. What happens if you fail your mission? There wasn't an easy way to answer that. And so, Ojpin told the truth. The brothers would wipe out all of humanity, Ojpin made sure not to say again. While the two had been rather accepting of his answers, he wasn't sure of how they would react to learning that this was humanity's second go on Remnant. Why does she want you to fail? What did the brothers ever do to her? That was much harder to answer. Why did Professor Kadoya have to ask these questions so soon? The brothers punished her for what they saw as a crime against them, and now she wants revenge. That wasn't a complete stretch of the truth. Ojpin just hoped they wouldn't press on that issue. I assume that you have something that is supposed to help you, Tsukasa stated. I doubt your god or whatever would not give you any help with this. Ojpin noticed that he specifically said, your god. Yes, it was better just to admit it outright. I was granted the ability akin to reincarnation. What? What do you mean? When my body dies, my soul would move on and enters another owned by a like-minded individual. So, you can't truly die until you fulfill your mission? Tsukasa acted like that was not the strangest thing he has ever heard in his life. Either he doesn't believe Ojpin didn't care, or he has encountered something more absurd. Correct, if there was anything Ojpin could gather from this meeting, it's that both writers were ready to believe anything. Now then, there's one more matter we have to address. And that is? No matter what happens, I want you two to mention nothing about this meeting to anyone. They were his triumph card, not to Ironwood, not to Miss Goodwitch, not even to Crow if you ever meet him. Any reason why you don't want anyone in your secret circle knowing? Truth be told, one of the reasons I wanted to recruit you two is that I believe someone in my group is a mole. Because someone found out your maiden's identity? You catch on quickly, Ojpin complimented. While I don't think those three are the traitors, it's best they don't know you two are aware of our activities. Fine then, can we go now? Tsukasa was rather impatient for some reason. I have other things to do. Tsukasa. Don't be rude. AG repeated. Of course. If need any help with anything, don't hesitate. Before Ojpin could finish his sentence, his scroll rang. Yes, Glinda? What is it? Ojpin. Something managed to break into Beacon. There's 3 of them. Miss Goodwitch shouted over the speaker before the sound of an explosion rang out. They're near the cafeteria. Let's go, AG. Tsukasa calmly said before summoning another dimensional wall and left Ojpin behind. Outside the cafeteria. If there was a word that could describe the situation Tsukasa walked in on, it was chaotic. Just as Miss Goodwitch had said, 3 monsters were fighting against the student body and some of the nearby teachers with little success on the latter two's part. What Tsukasa didn't expect was exactly what they were. All three were humanoid in shape, being slightly taller than the average person. The first looked like bones were poking out all over its body. Most of its body was ashy gray in color with some black parts on it. Its head had visible fangs as well as two antennas jutting out. Its eyes, along with most of its face, were yellow and veined with a green crystal-like object between them. Red lines ran all over its body and head. Along its waist was a belt-like object, with a strange buckle fused into its body. Engraved on its right shoulder was the word "Faiz." The second monster's body was mostly white, with some black, yellow, and red streaks running across it. Its head was in the shape of a rocket and had two silver horns. Its red eyes were glowing along with the green gem that was embedded onto its face. Another strange belt buckle was infused with its waist. Written horizontally on its right shoulder was the word "Force." The final monster was purple. One can easily see it as a ninja as it had with its minimal armor and the headpiece it was wearing. On its waist was a shuriken with a skull in its center fused into its body. On its right arm guard was the word "Shinobi." "Tsukasa, aren't those Takumi's and Gentaro's dash?" "Yes, another phase in fours," Tsukasa answered Eiji's question before he even finished asking. "Which rider is that ninja one?" "That is Kamen Rider Shinobi's another rider, a rider that no longer exists. That poses a big problem." Tsukasa didn't have the ability to transform into any of the future riders, doesn't matter, come on. Strapping the Neo Deca driver on, Tsukasa got ready to transform for the fourth time in this world. Right next to him, Eiji put on the OO driver and took out the Taka, Tora, and Bata metal. Henshin. Kamen Ride, Decade. Taka. Tora. Bata. Tatoba. Tatoba Tatoba. You hold off another shinobi. I'll deal with phase in fours, Decade ordered before charging at the two another riders, leaving Oo to handle shinobi by himself. With Tsukasa. Another riders had only one real thing going for them. It's that they are only vulnerable to the powers of the Kamen riders they were based on. While Tsukasa could push them back thanks to his skill, the students and teachers that tried to fight them had no such luck. Most of them were injured by either another phase's punch and kicks or another four's rocket launcher that was also destroying the surroundings. Dodging a punch from the fake phase, Tsukasa decided that it would be destroyed first. Opening his driver, Tsukasa slid out a new rider card for the ride booker. The rider depicted on it looked like a cleaner version of another phase. Instead of the fake's monstrous look, the helmet of the phase pictured on the card had a yellow visor that was split by two red lines that extended onto his antennas and replicated the phi symbol. Kamen Ride, Phase. From Decade's driver, glowing red lines flowed out and traveled over his body and legs. Finally, Decade glowed brightly before his armor was replaced with that of the man without dreams, Kamen Rider Freeze. Contrasting with the another rider, the ashy bone armor that the latter had was instead silver armor with a black undersuit. Changing the ride booker to its sword mode, Tsukasa slashed at another phase. In a normal 1v1 fight, it was obvious that Tsukasa would easily win, especially since the another rider didn't seem sane in any sense of the word. The wild card that is another force made things a tiny bit difficult, laying covering fire with the launcher module. He had to finish off one of them quickly. Making a swift kick to knock another phase back, Tsukasa took out a golden Final Attack Ride card. Final Attack Ride, FA phase. On Tsukasa's right ankle, a strange object similar to a flashlight materialized and attached itself. Taking a moment to prepare himself, Tsukasa leaped into the sky. Pointing his right foot at another phase, a red light shot out from the flashlight. When the light struck the another rider, it enlarged into a holographic red drill, keeping the fake rider in place for a flying sidekick. Ha! The force of the kick sent another phase flying into the wall of the cafeteria. A red holographic version of the phi symbol appeared over its body. With a short scream, the another rider exploded. With Eiji. If there was one thing Eiji could say about another shinobi, it's that it was incredibly skilled. In the brief skirmish, it had demonstrated the ability over the elements and could travel through the shadows and was really fast. After a brief moment to think about it, Eiji realized that it was easy for him to deal with the latter two issues. Grabbing the two other yellow core metals, Oo replaced the Taka and Bata metals. Lion. Tora. Cheetah. Rata Rata. Ratora Ta. Switching to the scorching combo, Eiji released a bright light from the lion head. Unlike the sparring match against Team RWBY, Oo didn't have to hold back. At max power, the heat radiating from La Torita began burning the area along with another shinobi and getting rid of the shadows. The ones who were fighting the another riders had retreated upon seeing the two riders' arrival and were far away from the battle. When the light died down, Eiji quickly scanned the metals within his driver with the O scanner. Scanning charge. Seiya. Just like before, a bright light shone from Eiji as three yellow rings materialized in between the two. Charging through the ring while simultaneously burning another shinobi again, Oo slashed at it with the Tora claws. Thrown back by the blow, the another rider exploded. Phew! Eiji let out a sigh of relief. At least before he remembered what Tsukasa said about the another riders, only the original riders could truly defeat them. Shinobi. From the smoke created by the explosion, another shinobi emerged. Oh no! He was in for the long haul. But before he could continue the fight, something odd happened. From out of nowhere, a flying scarf flew in and somehow forced the another rider back. The scarf then formed a sphere, and a young man with a strange book appeared in it. Who are you? Despite learning that his employer was a reincarnating man with a mission from this world's god less than 10 minutes earlier, Eiji found the surprise appearance of the young man strange. It's a pleasure to meet you, Eiji Hino, the young man bowed in respect. My name is Waz, loyal retainer to Oma Zio. Zio? Wait, Tsukasa said that you were erased from the timeline. Why are you here in this world? It's not surprising for him to think that. Unfortunately, we have to talk about my circumstances later. We have a more important issue to deal with first. With that statement, Waz took out his own driver. It was mostly black with neon green parts. In the center of the driver was a clear panel with 3 green buttons on its left side. On the right side was a green lever with a rectangle hole in it. Now then, shall we begin? Putting the driver on his waist, a green strap wrapped itself around Waz. Beyond driver. Taking out a pocket watch-like object with the face of a green Kamen rider on it, was pressed a button situated on the top of it. Waz. Inserting the Waz mirrored watch into the slot in his driver, was pressed the button again, making the gates on the watch open. Underneath the gates were the blue katakana for rider. Action. Finally, the loyal retainer to the King of Time flipped the lever. Henshin. Toei. Future Time. Sugoi. Jidai. Mirai. Kamen Rider Waz. Waz. From behind Waz, a giant holographic analog watch materialized as rings of light surrounded the post-apocalyptic rider. As the rings encircle him, holographic parts of his armor appeared and solidified as a black and white bodysuit covered Waz. In the clock, the HUD showed the katakana 4 rider before it shot out while the armor attached itself to the retainer. Lastly, the katakanas fused with his helmet. On his shoulder pads was a symbol that contained the word Kamen. Going down his chest and back was an armor piece that resembled a watch strap. On Waz's wrist were 4 other mirrored watches, one for the 3 future riders as well as a blank one. Standing in the retainer's place was a new Kamen rider. IWAE. The rider announced, I am the chronicler of past and future, prophet of the one true timeline. My name is Kamen Rider Waz. And this is the first page in a new chapter of history. Chapter 11, The King of Time and the Retainer. My name is Kamen Rider Waz. And this is the first page in a new chapter of history. The loud proclamation rang out across Beacon, making everyone pause in their step. Kamen Rider Waz? A third one? What's up with that speech? That belt is so loud. Mutters came from the crowds that were watching the fight. Was? When did he get here? Decade wondered as he continued to push back another fours. He began to speculate why the retainer and another writer's remainders of the world of ZO have appeared on remnant in the back of his mind. Forgive me, was apologized, it has been a while since I last rejoiced anything. Jik in despair. Yarasuji, conjuring a black and neon green spear, was readied himself for his battle. Somewhere, in another world. A city in ruin. Civilians attempting to escape the calamity only to be felled by monsters and beings of unimaginable powers. A strange wall dividing the city. Many towers standing undisturbed by the disaster. And standing in the chaos was a black and golden warrior. IWAE. The ultimate king of time who will rule over the past and future. And his name is Omazio. This is the moment in which we arrive in the last chapter of history. An evil laugh. I'd been waiting for this moment. I pushed Tokiwa Sougo to the brink of despair for this. It's time for me to take Omazio's power. A sinister voice, one which oozed with arrogance. What grand power! With this power, I'll be able to surpass my little sister. I will truly inherit the crown then. Dark purple energy connected the two. One a true king, the other a pretender. Without warning, the dark presence recoiled in pain. Unable to handle the supreme power. Did you think someone like you could absorb my power? A voice filled with pain. Filled with anger and despair. Watches appearing out of thin air around the king. My power is the power of all riders. Tokiwa. A voice called out from beyond the darkness. The power of all riders? The boy mumbled sleepily. Riders? What did he mean by that? Tokiwa! That voice shouted directly in his ear, jarring the student out of his nap. What? What happened? The boy said without thinking. As if on cue, the entire class laughed at his misfortune. Standing in front of his desk, with an irritated expression, was his teacher. Tokiwa Sougo, how many times do I have to warn you? Do not fall asleep in class. Evidently, this was not the first time the 18-year-old student was caught dozing off at school. I'm sorry, sensei. I promise it won't happen again. Normal high schooler, Tokiwa Sougo. From the look of him, one can assume that he was your average Japanese student. Living with his uncle in a clock shop, he gets an average grade, most of the time, and goes to Hikarigamori High School with his friends. One wouldn't even think that beneath that innocent face was a dark secret that no even he knows about. You're so lucky that sensei only gave you a stern warning. That was the fourth time he caught you sleeping. One of his classmates, Owada, said, "What's up with you, Tokiwa? You've been taking naps nearly every day now." I'm not sure. I keep finding myself tired all the time. Sougo replied. Well, just make sure to get some rest at home later, okay? We don't want you getting sick as Mukawin did. Guais had fallen ill earlier that week, leaving him and Tsukuyami in their small group. That reminds me, where's Tsukuyami? I thought she was here earlier. Ah. The principal called her to his office while you were asleep, something about needing her medical records. And that left Sougo to walk home by himself. Later. Cycling back to his uncle's clock shop, Sougo found himself thinking of the latest of his strange dreams. Recently, he had been dreaming of armored heroes similar to those he watched growing up. It started normally at first, or at least as normal a bug-themed superhero could be. Sougo initially couldn't remember much about them, but now the details became more and more clear each day. The King of Time, huh? While it was true Sougo dreamed of being a king, he never envisioned himself being the King of Time. So, what did that dream mean? Hopping off his bike, Sougo walked up a staircase onto a bridge as he usually does on his way back home. What usually doesn't happen is a strange man in white approaching him. "Hello there," the man said with a smile on his face. Hello?" Sougo responded warily, "What do you want?" "I need you to hold on to this for me." The man tossed the teen a strange grey pocket watch. Oddly enough, there was no clock on it, and keep an eye out for the other double. Without any warning, the man suddenly disappeared. As if he wasn't even there in the first place. What just happened? Sougo was completely confused and took a look at the watch. "And what's this?" he asked no one in particular. A strange feeling of déjà vu washed over him. As if something like this happened before. The other double? Strangely, Sougo felt like he knew exactly what the man was talking about while simultaneously not having a single clue as to who or what double even is. "I'm home," Sougo said as he entered his home. "Welcome back, Sougo." "Oh, you can come back for it in 2 days." His uncle, Tokiwa Junikura, answered back before resuming talking with his customer. Going into the dining room, Sougo placed his bag on one of the chairs. Taking another look at the grey watch, the teen felt he knew what it was and who that strange man was. However, the names continued to elude him. "Oh, Sougo!" his uncle shouted from the other room. "Guai's called earlier. He wanted me to tell you to visit him for something." "Sure, I'll change first." Temporarily putting the matter in the back of his mind, Sougo went upstairs. Having grown up in the area, Sougo knew many shortcuts and pathways around town. The way to Guai's apartment would normally take a bit from his house, but Sougo had long since discovered an alternate way through an abandoned warehouse district that other people seldom go. Humming to himself, Sougo didn't realize that someone, or rather something, was watching him. Conjuring a green cyclone, the being sent the teen flying off his bike. "Ow! Who's there?" Being thrown off onto the pavement caused Sougo to hit his head. "Show yourself." From the shadows of a warehouse, a strange monster stepped out into the light. An abomination, the monster was split down the middle with stitches. The right side of its body was green and looked like it was made of tattered cloth. A golden brace covered the wrist with a golden V etched onto its chest. Opposite to it, its body's left side was black and was made of a metallic substance. Purple spikes covered its arm with a purple V contrast the right side. A golden belt buckle in the shape of a W infused into its waist glowed brightly. On its face was a creepy smile permanently stitched on. Glowing eyes under a red visor stared down the teenager who took a step back. On its left leg was the word double. For a brief moment, an unknown memory flashed in Sougo's mind. A half-and-half detective. He didn't know where he recognized the monster from. "Now, count up your sins." The monster's voice was distorted, as if two different voices were speaking as one. "Who are you? How do I know you?" Sougo whispered to himself. In the brief moment of hesitation on the latter's part, the strange monster quickly charged him. Out of instinct, Sougo somehow managed to dodge a swipe from the monster. The monster clearly wasn't expecting any resistance and couldn't recover fast enough before its target retreated into the building. He didn't know how, but Sougo had managed to lose the monster temporarily. Ducking behind one of the massive pieces of machinery left behind, the teenager took a moment to catch his breath. "Yo, how you doing, kid?" From out of nowhere, the strange man from earlier appeared right next to him. "What the dash? What are you doing here?" Sougo tried his best to be as quiet as possible. "Is that what you mean by the other double?" "Yup," the man said without a single care in the world. "Do you still have the ride watch?" "Ride watch? Does he mean the pocket watch?" Taking it out of his pocket, Sougo showed it to the man. "You mean this?" It's still not responding." Come out wherever you are," the monster called out into the darkness, its eyes still glowing. "I think you should follow me," the man said. Suddenly, a grey translucent wall appeared beside the stranger. "Hang on a moment. What is going on? Would you rather get to safety or be left with another rider?" Rider. That word again. From the depth of his consciousness, something was screaming at him that he knew what it meant. Found you. Before he could choose, the another rider leaped over the machine and landed a few feet in front of him. Come on, let's go. The strange man grabbed Sougo's arm and pulled him into the wall. Instead of hitting themselves, the wall rippled out and allowed the two to go through. No! Despite its best effort, the another rider only managed to grab air as the wall disappeared before it could pass through. Where am I? Sougo screamed as he suddenly found himself on top of a building. Calm down. The another rider won't find us here. The strange man said as he peered over the edge of the roof. And who are you? How do you know me? Why was that monster after me? Sougo had been having a pretty bad day so far. You know the answers to that. You just don't remember yet, the man cryptically said. What do you mean by that? I've never met you before. Yes, you have. In your old world, old world? What was that supposed to mean? When you awaken to your powers again, you'll know everything. My powers? Yes, your power, almighty King of Time. King of Time. Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out from below. What's going on now? All Sougo wanted to do now was lie down and rest. Walking up next to the man who, maybe, saved his life, the displaced teen looked down to the ground. Kamen Ride 4s. Switching gears, Tsukasa's form changed again. This time, his bodysuit was white with orange and black highlights. Similar to another 4's, his helmet turned into the shape of a rocket and his bug-eye visor turned orange. On his right gauntlet was an orange circle, while his left one had a black square. Meanwhile, his right leg had a blue cross, while his left leg contained a yellow triangle. This new rider was that of the man who would make friends with all Kamen Rider 4's. On the other hand, Woz had managed to knock another shinobi down temporarily. From his Mirai watch holder, the retainer grabbed a new Mirai watch, which depicted a ninja rider. Shinobi! Replacing the Woz Mirai watch in his driver with the Shinobi Mirai watch, Woz pressed the button again to open its gates. Action! TOEI. Future time. Dare Ja? Or Ja? Ninja. Futuring Shinobi. Shinobi. Woz's shoulder pads, chest armor, and helmet were replaced by new purple armor. Instead of the Kamen symbol on his shoulders, shurikens instead took its place. A purple-like cloth replaced the watch strap on Woz's chest with a large purple shuriken. Finally, the word rider on his helmet was replaced by shinobi in katakana. Now, Woz was channeling the power of the future rider of 2022. The legendary ninja, Kamen Rider Shinobi. Let's finish this decade, was said as he pressed one of the buttons on his spear. Kamashisuji. Pulling on the tip of the Jiken Despair, was turned it into its sickle mode. Oomph, whatever you say. Taking out a final attack ride card, Tsukasa inserted it into the Neo Deca driver. Final attack ride, FOU 4s. Suddenly, an orange rocket and yellow drill materialized on the rider's right arm and left foot respectively. Using the rocket module, Tsukasa launched high into the air. Once again, Tsukasa aimed for the fake 4s and kicked the monster with the drill module. With its innate weakness to force power, the another rider was finally defeated in a fiery explosion. Beyond the time. Woz, on the other hand, flipped the lever in the Beyond driver for his own finisher. Subsequently, he pressed the comma button on his sickle before swiping the screen several times. Ninpu Jiken Shibari no Jutsu. Ichigeki Kamen. A green electrical charge surrounds the sickle before Woz stabbed another shinobi. Lifting it up and into the air, the green Kamen Rider created copies of himself before slashing the another rider multiple times. Finally, the fake rider was destroyed in a green explosion. Awesome! Sougo knew them. Something in his mind was screaming at him to remember who the two armored heroes were. Now then, I'll be taking my leave, the man suddenly said. Give Tsukasa my regards. Wait a minute. You're leaving me here. Yup, Tsukasa can figure out what to do with you. Just as suddenly as before, the man in white disappeared. Oh, man. Now left by his lonesome, Sougo Tokiwa tried to find his way down from where he was. That was amazing, Tsukasa. Eiji complimented, already de-transformed. Later, we have bigger problems now. Tsukasa de-transformed as well, already focused on his next task. What are you doing here, Was? I assumed you already knew why. It seems that I was wrong. The retainer simply said. Professor Kadoya. Before they could discuss any further, the trio of spatially displaced Kamen riders was swarmed by the crowd of students who had been watching the fight. How did you manage to defeat them? Who's this new guy? What were those monsters? Questions after question flooded their ears. Children, please restrain yourselves. Thankfully, they were saved by Miss Goodwitch, who had already begun using her semblance to repair the area. You three, follow me. Guess we're having a trip to Ojpin again. Less than a half hour later, the two riders and their new friend found themselves in front of Beacon's headmaster again. Miss Goodwitch had left earlier to help clear up the aftermath of the battle. Are we waiting for Ironwood again? Tsukasa lazily asked, wanting this meeting done and over with. Yes, he shall be here any moment now. Ojpin replied, taking a sip of his drink as if a catastrophe had not happened. Ding! Ah! That should be him now. Sure enough, the General of Atlas stepped out of the elevator with a tired expression on his face. It looked like he had not been getting any sleep as of late. Now then, first of all, why don't you introduce yourself? Ojpin asked the new Kamen rider. What? You didn't hear that guy's speech? The traveler snarkily said. My name is Was, retainer to Omazio. The retainer ignored Tsukasa's comment and answered the question without pause. Well, that's just fantastic. Tsukasa mentally facepalmed. He spent weeks trying to keep his secrets out of Ojpin's hands, and no one of them was just airing out in front of him. And who exactly is this Omazio? Ojpin was genuinely intrigued by Waz's answer, finally learning something related to his newest allies. Wagamau is the greatest, kindest, and the most beloved. Before Waz could finish, Tsukasa had elbowed him just as he did earlier to Eiji. Tsukasa, what are you doing? Eiji questioned. If you could please continue. Ironwood interjected, also wanting to know more. In response, Tsukasa simply stared at him before turning to Ojpin. Is there any reason he has to be here? Has anyone mentioned you've been rather cranky lately? Eiji asked. Not to my face, no. Regardless, we need to know what exactly were those things that attacked Beacon. I assume the three of you know the answer. Yes. Not really. No. They all gave contradicting answers. Although in Eiji's case, he truly didn't know much about them outside of what Tsukasa had told him. Tsukasa Kadoya, why do you insist on making things more difficult? Ironwood didn't seem to be in the mood for any more games. You clearly haven't spent a single hour with this man. Was noted. Now. There's no need for any quarreling. We simply want to know if there's any way for us to combat this new threat. Ojpin tried to play peacemaker for the group. I'll make this clear. What they are something that doesn't concern any of you. Seeing as they've attacked Beacon, I say that this does concern us. Ironwood was getting more and more irritated every moment. You clearly know what they are. So, what if we do? Even if I, for whatever reason, do tell you, there is nothing any of you can do about them. Tsukasa. Eiji reprimanded. You three may leave now. Ojpin said without warning. Ojpin? It's clear that Professor Kadoya will not budge on the matter. But Ojpin dash. Leave. There was no need for him to say it twice, as Tsukasa was already on his way out. What's the matter with you, Ajban? We could have finally found out more about those monsters. I know, but it's imperative that we do not drive him away. If he does, we would never be able to catch him again. What do you mean by that? Ajban. James, please let this rest. Ajban pleaded. All right, with that, Ironwood left Ajban's office. Of course, the headmaster of Beacon knew that his old friend would not just lie down and let it pass. He just hoped that the general would not do anything drastic. Was that really necessary, Tsukasa? AG questioned. The three had grouped up in the former's room after that disaster of a meeting. Not really, but something about that general annoys me, Tsukasa answered. Now let's focus on our new problem. Why are you here? As I said earlier, I assumed you would know the answer to that. Tsukasa sighed and breathed in for a moment. I think I have an idea, but that still does not explain the other writers. And what is this idea? Was asked. First, what happened to Zio and the others when the worlds were restarted? When he rebooted the timeline, Wagamao made it so that Guais and Tsukiyomi are a natural part of the new world. They all go to school together now. And the Time Jackers? Did he do anything with them? Yes. R and Aura were revived as his schoolmates. And Swartz? The man who got lucky and managed to steal the power of Decade. He was reincarnated as a guidance counselor in Hikarigamori. And I assume none of them remember the old world. That is correct. Man. I am really out of the loop here. AG mumbled to himself. But nothing happened to you at all. You remember everything from before. Correct. And that means you're the sole remainder of the world of Zo. That wasn't a question but a fact. Is that important? Maybe. What were you doing before you were transported here? I was recording my lord's actions. I then found myself in that city without warning. Not even a dimensional wall? I do not think so. At least that guy's not involved. Kadoya, do you now know what caused my arrival? To put it simply, you were rejected by the new world. What? Technically, the new timeline Zo created is not the same as the old one. It could not even be called a world of Zo as there are no writers in it, Tsukasa explained, because you were not reborn with the others. The new world he created didn't recognize you as someone that belonged in it. So basically, AG had been watching from the sidelines. Was thrown out because his world didn't want him? That's the gist of it. That's most likely why I found myself here as well. Are you absolutely sure about that, Kadoya? Don't worry about it, Was. You'll get used to it eventually. Tsukasa. I don't think that's what you're supposed to say. How about the other writers? Why are they here? Was seemed to be taking the situation well. That's the problem. As far as I remember, Swartz didn't revive in the end. They should not be any appearing. So, someone is creating them for their own purpose. Exactly. Somewhere on Remnant. Katsumi Dato had been kept in the dark ever since he arrived in this new world, not that he realized he was in another dimension in the first place. All he knew was that his captor, his name was Salem, and seemed to be trying to groom him for something. She had long since realized that the Necro-Over was someone who she would want on her side. I see that you are awake. How are you feeling now? Despite her appearance, she was rather affable. Better. Maybe it was a result of his madness, but he felt that he could trust the woman. There is something we have to discuss. Come to the hall as soon as you can. Taking a few minutes to secure his possession, the Dark Rider left for the main hall. When he entered, the two other residents of this strange place, Arthur Watts and Tyrion Kalos, were already there. From what he heard, Salem had two more subordinates that were out on missions. You finally arrived. I thought you fell asleep in the hallway again. Arthur was referring to how they initially found him. Now, Arthur. Don't be disrespectful to our guest. Salem spoke from her seat at the end of the table. Sorry, ma'am. Take a seat. We have much to talk about. Katsumi Dato followed the woman's request. Unknowingly, he was to be dragged into a war that has been lasting lifetimes. Hello? Anybody around? Sougo was lost, very lost. He had no idea where he was, and no one is around to help. Where is everybody? Hello? Who's there? A voice called out. Finally, he found someone. Hello? Can you help me? Sougo didn't have much choice left and had to trust whoever found him. I need to find someone named Tsukasa. You mean the new professor? Of course. The person who found him seemed happy to be meeting him. My name's Penny Polandina. To be continued.